apparently this is a two-parter. The first part is only 12 minutes, but the second part's an hour. So hopefully they get into it. As a matter of fact, let me real quick just update the title of the stream. Devin Archer. All right, we updated that one. Let's update Rumble as well. Edit. Tucker interviews. Devin Archer. Save. Close. All right, back to Twitter. Even if you're coming from a victimhood mentality, at least go full Malcolm X. That's more respectable. Malcolm X did not have a victim mentality, though. I don't think he had a victim mentality at all. I was going to change that, but no, I don't think that he had the victim type mentality. I really don't. I think he knew how capable, the black people as a whole, as a group, were, and I think he was disappointed in his people. And he was right. He was right. Yeah, we need the victor mentality, not the victim mentality. All right, let me find good old Tucker again, because I changed the thingy-mabob. And where we are, Devin Archer,
Biden and a bunch of different businesses.
All right, let's get that pulled up. All right, well, if you're new to the live, welcome. My name is Randall. This is the McClures. We react, review, we make fun of, we laugh at stuff over here. Links are in the description if you'd like to support. ShopMcClures.com is the website. Follow me on socials. They're on the top of the screen. All that good stuff. We do appreciate it. We're going to be getting into another Tucker interview. This one was with Devin Archer. I don't know if you guys are aware of Devin Archer. He is a former business partner of Hunter Biden. He's, I guess, like a whistleblower type of dude. And hopefully we get some dirt. That's what we're looking for. All the lefties on my Instagram are asking for the proof. Where's the proof? Because they only watch mainstream media who says there's no proof. Even though we have FBI 1035 forms, we have FBI whistleblowers, we have people like this guy, former partners. We got text messages, emails. None of that's evidence, though. So hopefully this will present some stuff. Danny checked in, just came from the Bone Thugs and Akon. I tried reaction. Okay, dope. I appreciate it. We just put that one out. I actually recorded that one a minute ago, and it was saved. It was saved in the backlog. If I get a chance to revisit Bone or individual members from the group, you suggest Crazy Bone. He's on another level. All right. Drop it in the comments. Or I'll write it down. Or screenshot it or something. Can we screenshot it? I'll tell you what. Hold on. Do. We will add it to the list. How about that? All right, so Crazy Bone, another level music video. All right, let's see. Crazy Bone, another level. 22. And save. Okay. It is on the list, my guy. It is on the list. So we will get to it when we get to it. We do every Friday is viewer request day. That's when we try to knock down some of the list of your guys' requests. So, but we also get into them on other days as well. But especially Friday, we designate to try to get specifically to your guys' request. Sometimes the show gets distracted and sidetracked on Fridays, but for the most part, we try to stick to that list or check out brand new stuff that just dropped. All right, so let's get into this. We're going to be checking out Tucker Carlson's interview with Devin Archer. He is a former business partner of Hunter Biden. So he's dropping the knowledge, letting us know how corrupt that crackhead is. We're going to get into it. I'm interested.
So you worked with Hunter Biden in a bunch of different businesses. What were the specific skills that he brought to clients?
Well, at the end of the day, he had a career in Washington,
Yeah.
Graduated Yale Law School, and had a very big network in DC, and brought that know-how and understanding of DC, and ultimately the Biden brand.
The know-how. So as far as I could tell, he wasn't doing legal work. I mean,
Correct.
He wasn't in the counsel's office at Burisma, right?
No.
So the network and the Biden brand sounds like the kind of key component of
Absolutely,
what
yeah.
he was bringing.
Yep.
Do you think that he would have been in those businesses, not having a business background, without his father being in a government position?
It's hard to speculate in those regards. I mean,
Yeah.
I think when we initially met and he talked about his advisory business, his business that needed to transition from lobbying to advisory, and the interest in private equity, it seemed like a new and interesting network for us to expand our business. Whether he could have, been in that position, it's hard for me to speculate.
Right.
But obviously, the brand of Biden, adds a lot of power when your dad's the vice president.
For sure. And there was
answer.
a time, maybe 10 years ago, when private equity, maybe like AI now, was just one of those terms people were throwing out. I'm in private equity.
Right.
But the mechanics, having done it, coming
Right.
from a business background yourself, are kind of complex. Are
Absolutely.
they not?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's a complex business. Takes years of training. But again, the initial idea around the business, they were going to provide, the government insight and an additional network to raise capital, and then, deal with regulatory issues that you might have at the corporate level.
Right. Regulatory issues.
Exactly.
Okay. So that would be more his area.
Right. That would be his space.
Right. But did he have a sophisticated understanding of regulation, do you think?
I think that he led a team that had a sophisticated.
Okay, because I lived in Washington a long time, around a lot of regulation. Also, a very complex area.
Absolutely. I think you got to be an expert in knowing the guy, and he was the guy that was the expert in knowing the guy.
He was an expert in knowing the guy.
Right.
And who was the guy he knew?
Well, he knew a lot of people, but obviously there was some familiar, his brother, his father, some of his father's siblings. So he knew a lot of people. And obviously I know you're pointing to, the father being the key relationship.
No, I'm just trying to get a sense of, like, Washington's not a money town.
Right.
People aren't in business in Washington for the
Right.
most part, and most people don't have business skills that I noticed in 30 years of living there. So really the business of Washington is selling access. That's what it looked like to me.
Yes.
Not just under Biden, but like,
yeah, no,
that's
I
what
think
people
that's,
do.
I think that's one of the core misconceptions.
That is what people do.
It seems like when understanding a regulatory environment means selling access at the end of the day. That's how I interpret it. And I think that's how most people in Wall Street, whether they admit it or not, interpret it.
Yeah. So we've got a complex business that intersects with government. We need a guy who knows it.
Right. How do I, deal with getting a guy a visa that needs to come over for a business deal?
Right.
Call our lobbyist that knows the guy in DHS or used to work in DHS, or, in Customs and Border Patrol or the people at the embassy and state. They might be able to help. So there are very like tactical elements that are regulatory and compliance and governance that you have to go through, and you got to know the guy that worked at the old agency that now has the lobbying firm that can go back to the agency and get things put to the front of the line.
So the reason I'm asking this is because it's not to give the Bidens a pass, hardly, but when people say, well, there's some question about whether Hunter was trading on his father's name, if you live in Washington, like that's the whole city right there.
Right.
Gabby, I do see your comment on there. I will check it out later and go through it for sure.
I think you know.
And thank you for getting involved in the chat and the comments. We appreciate it. We'd appreciate it. Give me a thumbs up too while you're at it.
The answer to that. At the end of the day,
so
he had the best advantage to do that because of where he was. And, we thought that when we went into business, this was a great opportunity for us.
So I get it. And you're not the only one who did that.
Right. There were a lot of
Hunter
businesses.
Biden's not the only son of a famous government official who's done this, right? At all. But I just wonder, like, when you hear people say, well, it's kind of an open question.
Right.
About why they hired Hunter Biden. Like, that's pretty disingenuous, no?
Right. I think at the end of it, so when you look at the whole, there are people that maybe were, sons or relatives or brother-in-laws of other high-ranking officials, but I think what we ran into and with what Hunter ran into was like almost like an Icarus issue. So he got it was too close to the sun. It was too good to be true. And the connections were too close and the scrutiny too much.
Yes.
And it ended up destroying, it left a wake of a lot of destruction in business over a number of years.
So how many, it's been reported.
Good for you, Gabby. Do what you can. If everybody does a little bit more, we might be able to save the country. So you are appreciated. And she gave me a thumbs up. So
and you have said that there were occasions when Joe Biden would call in with clients present on a speakerphone.
Right.
How many times do you think that happened?
I mean, over a 10-year partnership, I would, the number I'm going with is 20. That's probably the amount that I kind of reckon. Yeah, a lot, you could say.
So Joe Biden, who's very much a product of Washington, of course, must have known that he was calling in to effectively a business meeting that his son was having. I mean, he must have understood that was.
This is the question right here, because when the Biden lawyers or whatever came out of that most recent Senate hearing or meeting or whatever they had, that's what they tried to play it off as. They're like, yes, Biden did call Hunter during business meetings, but he was unaware that they were business meetings, and it was just Hunter, like doing a party trick. Like, watch who I can get on the phone. Everybody say hi to the vice president. I'm a big dog. And that was probably part of it for sure. But the whole point of it is, look who I can get on the phone. So you need to make this happen for me, or we can't make it happen for you.
Kind of what his son was selling.
Well, it's hard for me to speculate on that.
But I guess my question, just to keep it to the facts, Joe Biden, then the sitting vice president, knew that there were Hunter's business associates in the room.
Yeah, I think I can definitively say at particular dinners or meetings, he knew there were business associates, and or if I was there, I was a business associate too.
Yeah.
So I think
Gabby's speaking facts in the comments.
Any of the other colleagues from the DC office or the New York office were there. So yeah, at times there were. From the to be completely clear on the calls, I don't know if it was an orchestrated call in or not. It certainly was powerful though, because if you're sitting with a foreign business person and you hear the vice president's voice, that's prize enough. I mean, that's pretty impactful stuff for anyone.
It's a good sales.
Been
sales
reported,
tactic.
and I know that it is true that Hunter and his brother were very close to their dad.
Absolutely.
Which I think is great.
Yep.
I've got a lot of kids. I'm very close to them. Talk to them every day.
Yeah.
Never called them on speaker during a business meeting. That's weird. You've got a lot of kids. You're close to them. Do you call them on speaker during business meetings?
Do I call?
I mean, what is that? A grown man calling his dad on a speakerphone during a business
Right,
meeting.
and to be clear, sometimes it was the call was coming in and the speaker would go on. So it's just the president. You have to be, I mean, you understand DC, right? So the power to have that access in that conversation, and it's not in a scheduled conference call, and it's a part of your family. That's like the pinnacle of power in DC.
100%. I guess I'm pivoting against the lie that I'm hearing people tell with a straight face. Congressman Goldman, for example, that we don't really know what was going on. Really? You're taking a call from the vice president and you put it on speaker. It's not just, hey, Dad, I'm in a meeting with some buddies.
Right.
It's let me put my dad, the vice president, on speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's obvious as
in
shit.
the rear view, it's an abuse of soft power, I'd say.
An abuse of soft power.
Gabby, I don't really have a regular schedule as far as the time. We do Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays for sure. I'm trying to stream more often and daily, but I got a bunch of side hustles that are fucking up my schedule. But I do need to lock down an actual schedule. So I appreciate the encouragement and the reminder to iron out those details. We are going to get that done.
Interesting. When did you meet Joe Biden?
Joe Biden, I met the first time probably at the 2000 convention. I think it was in LA, and then Boston was 2004. So those two times I probably shook hands as they made kind of the power circles around the. You've been to them through the skyboxes, and then following that, really when our partnership.
I'm in Arizona, so same time as you right now.
2009-ish. Conversation started. That's when I re-met Hunter and actually had a sit down and meal with him. Talked about the transition from lobbying into strategic advisory, and then kind of a some type of coalescence around
strategic advisory,
having a private equity fund that would have this unique access and understanding of a regulatory environment in DC.
Again, got it.
To be clear.
How many times do you think you met Joe Biden during the course of your relationship with Hunter?
How many times? I should have this off the top of my head since I've been asked so many times. Probably same thing.
I appreciate that. I don't think of Tucker as Fox News, though. He was one of the only guys that I watched on Fox when he was on there. But they kicked him out for a reason. I don't think he's a part of the club. And he's definitely more awake now than he ever has been in the past. And from a little side note that I watched an interview with Alex Jones recently, and I think he accidentally mentioned that he's been incommunicado with Tucker. So if Tucker's talking to Alex, that I think that means he's on the right side.
20.
So I got one last question for you, and we'll do a much longer interview and get the entire story. But we found this letter, kind of amazing. It's from January 20th, 2011, which I think puts you in your late 30s, mid to late 30s. Right. Okay, so you're a younger man. This is from the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, to you personally, and it's personalized here at the bottom. Devin Archer, Rosemont Seneca Partners, that was your partnership with Hunter Biden in Georgetown. Dear Devin, I apologize for not getting a chance to talk to you at the luncheon yesterday. I was having trouble getting away from hosting President Hu Jintang, who was running China at that point. I hope I get a chance to see you again soon with Hunter. I hope you enjoyed lunch. Thanks for coming. Sincerely, Joseph R. Biden Jr. P.S. Handwritten, happy you guys are together. So there are many levels here. But here's the Vice President of the United States saying to you, a man in his mid-30s, who's not a government official, I'm sorry I was occupied with the guy who runs the world's largest country. I would much rather talk to you, and thank you. What was he thanking you for?
Well, first of all, it's a lovely letter.
Emerald Robinson?
It's quite enthusiastic. It's a little weird, though, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I know about Emerald Robinson. I'll have to check her out, though, for sure.
Yeah, well, it was kind of the beginning of our partnership, and he was thanking me and thanking Hunter, I think, at the end of the day, for bringing this idea of this government regulatory strategic advisory business into the private equity world. And I think he was excited.
Government Regulatory Strategic Advisory. Is that the biggest load of shit you've ever heard in your... That's not a thing. Like, they just string a bunch of random words together and they think it's a new thing? Like they renamed influence peddling? That's crazy.
Excited about the prospects for Hunter, and he was just thanking me. I think it was a nice gesture.
It was a nice, for sure.
For sure.
Very polite. It gets a 10 on the etiquette scale.
I will check it out.
He's a vice president of the United States,
Right.
and he's talking about foreign business deals with you and thanking you for that.
I think, again, it goes back to my earlier point I think I hit the jackpot in finding the regulatory environment or company that can navigate right to the top. But, obviously, as time was told, being a little bit too close to the sun ends up burning you.
For sure. And it did you, and
Absolutely.
you suffered greatly for it. And
The
this
sun
is not
literally,
a criticism of you.
Hunter,
I would
is
think
the
as
sun.
a business guy, you use every advantage. These are not business guys. This is the vice president of the United States. He's not allowed to be working on businesses with foreign governments while he's vice president. I don't think.
Not that I know of.
But here he is.
Right.
Amazing. We'll be back. Devin Archer, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so there was part one. A little snippet, a little taste. And then we got part two coming
Long
up
Island.
as well.
I was born in Seacliff, Long Island.
So this is going to be the more in-depth. But yeah, in the Rumble chat, Gabby's mentioning an Emerald Robinson. So if you guys haven't checked out Emerald Robinson, it's been a recommendation that she's a very good journalist. She's up there with Laura Logan, who we know is fire. And she's got a couple other people for European affairs. Eva, let's try Vlardingerbrock. That's quite the fucking name. And Christine Andersons. Okay. Do you only listen to females? Is it... But females do make some of the good journalists. People say more to a woman, I think. All right. Part one's over. We're getting right into part two. Everybody new tapping in on Rumble, we appreciate you. If you can give me a thumbs up, that helps share the message. Give me a like, a follow, all that good stuff. Or even better, give me $1. We like those too. All right, let's get into this. Part two, Tucker on Twitter. Let's go.
So where are you from, and how did you grow up?
So from Long Island. I was born in Seacliff, Long Island, which is a little Victorian kind of hippie town on the North Shore of Long Island. Born on the same street as my wife, Dayton Street.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so for the first 3 years we were together on the same street. I'm a year older, so her mom used to babysit me when I used to eat Cheerios off the floor where she was pregnant with her, which was a pretty funny story. And then I moved to Roslyn Harbor, which was a mile away. And then we went to nursery school together. Ended up in the North Shore school districts. My mom was the art teacher at Glenwood Landing School, and went to North Shore High School. We were, prom dates senior year, and then dated for a bit in college, and then reunited after college some years later. But Long Island ended up.
What set that in socioeconomic context? Is that like a really rich part of Long Island or middle class?
No, we were middle class, very much middle class. My dad worked in the city. He was in he worked for Levi and Christian Dior in sales, and my mom was an art teacher, as I said. So I actually went. She was my art teacher K through 6.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was it was
pretty
a very
normal,
very
American.
normal, very middle class. 3-sport athlete. Lacrosse, winter track, football. Very kind of, even though it's Long Island and close to the city, it's kind of very Americana.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
Surprisingly.
So then you go to Yale for lacrosse.
I did. Well, I went to Yale for the academics, but we like to keep that, yes, but lacrosse was a big part of me being admitted, absolutely.
What did you think of it? Was it a different world from the one you were from?
Yale, yeah, absolutely. It's a long time ago to reflect back, but it was certainly there was a big culture shock, both academically and socially, immediately, like first weekend of school. So,
In what way?
just it was I got to school and there were without naming names, I was at the first weekend of school I wasn't in New Haven but out in the Cape with folks that the highways in New York were named after, and large condiments and tires and stuff like that.
Large condiments. Okay.
So it was definitely it was a big culture shock, but I adapted pretty quickly from a academic standpoint. The academic rigor was certainly from a public high school in Long Island relative to Taft or Exeter or Andover. There was a quick learning curve, but it was attainable. And then socially, I think I did a fine job.
Why? It's kind of weird to me that he doesn't want to mention the name of people that he met in college. Why? If you met the heir to the Hunt's ketchup fortune in college on your first week, and it was cool that you got to go out to the Cape and party with the rich people, okay, yay for you. Why can't you name the people though? I don't get it. Yeah, Netherlands going through some shit for sure. That's true.
Job as well too. So ended up at Yale. Went through 4 years. We had a successful lacrosse career there, which was an absolutely incredible experience, and kept you in line, kept you in shape.
Yeah.
Less distracted from everything. And graduated. I ended up a quick stint into your world. Ended up working on the Olympics for NBC for Bob Costas down at in '96 in Atlanta, and then went on to take a job at Citibank. So that's where I got my first agent.
We do have guests on the show. It's actually a new thing that I started. I've had one guest on, which I invited somebody from the chat. We chopped it up, one of my supporters. And I've done 2 interviews with whatchamacallit. Leslie, let's fucking go. Let's go, chick. We appreciate you. We appreciate you. Yeah, I do have guests on the show. We've done 2 interviews with independent artists and deep dive into their music. Those were kind of fun. But politically, I haven't had anybody on. Who I'd like to get on, or who I've been trying to link with, is Lou Valentino, who also streams on Rumble. He's newer to the right, and I wanted to have him on to chop it up. But yeah, we do guests. If you got some ideas for guests for me, let me know for sure.
Asia experience. I was fascinated with Vietnam, and had studied some contemporary American history in college. My dad was a veteran. He was a Marine, served in combat on the High Van Pass.
In Vietnam.
In Vietnam. So he was in Vietnam when he was 23. I'd gone on a trip around the world, and really just one of the stops was Vietnam. One of my.
Had he told you about it when you were growing up?
He did. We were a little bit irreverent and would tease him about it and get dressed up as fatigues and tell him we're knee deep in rice patties and
trying to elicit a flashback or something.
Trying to elicit PTSD maybe. Yeah, we were a little wild. me and my 3 brothers and sisters. So he didn't talk about it much, but we tried to bring it up a lot. It was kind of.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it was.
So you wound up working for Citibank in Vietnam.
I wound up getting
a job with Citibank.
What's up, chick?
I kind of orchestrated it through an uncle that had a relationship at Citibank, and ended up getting a management associate job there. They just opened. Doi Moi was kind of underway, which was the not necessarily privatization, but the opening of Vietnam post the war, the conflict, the war of American aggression.
Yeah,
as they've been coached to say, as if you live in Vietnam for some time. So went there, was management associate. Was in Hanoi for a year, and then a couple of years in Ho Chi Minh City. and ended up at Citicorp Asia Capital Limited, where I was in private equity. So
Wow.
that was the beginning.
Where'd you go after Vietnam?
After Vietnam, there was a nonprofit that had come through to produce a film about Vietnam, which
Yeah,
involved
for
a
sure.
bike
I'll do that,
ride,
Gabby.
on mountain bikes from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh City. It was
Long
an
way.
18-day ride, 1,200 miles, and we had a production team.
Well, we don't want to do any stolen valor over here, June. That's actually my grandfather's. It's my grandfather's. I never had the pleasure.
Actually video it. Citibank, they asked me at Citibank to sponsor it, so I wrote
One of my only regrets.
a letter to New York and said, "Can we sponsor this amazing event?" We've got 100, NVA disabled soldiers, and we've got 100 American veterans, primarily disabled, and we got on bicycles and hand cycles. I piloted a blind veteran that had been shot near Khe Sanh, and spent 18 days on a bike going over those memories, and then actually, this is how I left Citibank. I got a call. So this is an amazing experience, yada yada. I'm sitting at my desk at Citibank in Ho Chi Minh City, or I don't know, I forget what office I was in. Got a call and said, we had such a great time with you riding on the bike. Would you come back and produce, be a co-executive producer on this film? And you could get a job. One of the benefactors of the charity was a Goldman guy. One was at Equitable Financial at the time. And they're both the CEOs or senior partners. And they're like, we'll give you a job. You have the training at Citi. Just produce the movie for us. And so I went back, and we ended up, selling. I worked very closely with a great colleague down in Charlotte. We sold the film to NBC, title sponsor. We sold it to Reebok as a title sponsor. Got Dick Enberg to do the intro. Got Bruce Springsteen.
Tucker, I don't know what we're doing here, my guy. I don't know. Do we care about all this? Why are we asking him all this stuff? Your brother was shot in Vietnam, and you think I can't be a vet too? What do you mean? You could be a vet for sure. Why can't you? Well, shout out to your brother for taking one. Glad he made it home.
To donate a song.
Wow.
Yeah, Shut Out the Light. And it was a great success. We won the Emmy in '99. So
amazing.
Daytime Outstanding Program Achievement. So 1 for 1. Television production. This is my
So you're an
second time.
Emmy Award winner.
I am, yeah.
Amazing. So what'd you do after that?
So after that, I ended up going, the one kind of principal at Equitable Financial had moved over to New England Financial. So he'd taken a new job as the chairman and CEO of New England Financial. I went into the special, strategic, it was a strategic management group, and did a little bit of, it was primarily almost like an in-house management consultant in finance, across the business. They put me on a lot of different special projects, and that was my job for the next couple of years. And then we were actually bought by MetLife. And so when New England Financial was bought by MetLife, I went down to New York very quickly in that acquisition. But my boss, who was the CEO and chairman, became the president of individual life at MetLife, a much bigger organization. So it wasn't as interesting an opportunity. So I went out and started a technology company with one of the consultants I'd worked with previously, one of the management consultants. I think it was at Arthur Andersen. We started a tech company and sold that in 2004 to Coactive Marketing Group, which was a NASDAQ-listed company. And then from there, so that was kind of an exit while I was working very closely on the Carry for President campaign. So I was a volunteer. I was essentially raising capital, organized some different, I guess, surrogate tours and bus tours with some celebrities, stuff that's since backfired. But that campaign tag in 2004, it seemed to work. And basically was poised through kind of the success that I had in the fundraising, that I was going to go and take a job in the White House. So I thought I was, going to work in small business, or there was some other, there were all the larger kind of bundlers. I was a baby bundler. I think I was identified as in some in the New York Post at some point. But I ended up, looking at those jobs and looking at, what we'd have to do in security clearance and all that. long story short, it sold. Satara was the name of the company that sold, and poised to do that. We thought we were going to win, and then what was it, November 3rd, 2004? I basically hung a shingle and said I need a job because we lost.
I remember that. Yeah. The part where you lost.
The part. So I was in Boston. I think I was crying. I was with my wife. I remember we were in the hotel, like looking out at the acceptance stage, which like there was a couple, people strutting.
All right, June, I don't know what you're talking about. You want to look it up? I can give you names and dates. Do we want to look up your brother being shot? I don't know why we need to look that up. If you want to judge and make fun, and my grandfather was in World War II, be glad to give you dates. Yeah, I don't know what your issue is. I don't know who was making fun of you. I don't even know what you're talking about. I really don't.
Walking around the stage and
drunk days.
Yeah, exactly.
People, yeah.
Unexploded fireworks, and so that was an unsuccessful run. But I spent a lot of time and put a big effort into it, and it was a great experience. We thought we were doing a great thing, and unfortunately, it's hard to beat an incumbent.
So 2004 November, you're you're married, no job.
Yep, we're without a job, and I team up with a partner, and we start Rosemont. We start Rosemont Capital. And Rosemont Capital starts really as in the private equity world, which in something called a fundless sponsor. So when you're out and in private equity early, you go out as a fundless sponsor, and what that means is you don't have a pool of capital to kind of draw on, but you look for an asset. You identify an asset you think is going to be a good private asset that you can either take public or sell to another strategic buyer. So that's always kind of like the infancy of a private equity firm, and a lot of fundless sponsors succeed. A lot of fundless sponsors fall by the wayside, and a lot of managers at fundless sponsors just give up. But if you have some early successes, you can end up establishing a firm, and we ended up establishing a multi-asset class boutique firm that was was fairly successful. Most of our success was in real estate. We ended up buying a real estate management company, and that was called Rosemont Real. We renamed it Rosemont Realty. It was called BGK or some acronym, and we ended up putting the Rosemont brand on that after, I would say, 5 years in business at Rosemont Capital, and that business was sold later in 2015. But at our peak, we probably had $3 billion of assets under management, which is kind of like your scorecard as a private equity manager, we'd done some great things.
Was Hunter Biden an original partner at Rosemont?
No. Hunter Biden, I met really, or I had met him before, but had like substantive conversations at a lunch I met in 08, 09.
So you were already.
It was 5 years,
established
Absolutely.
With the business by then.
Yes, business was quite established. We had raised. We were in the Rosemont Seneca Partners came along. Really, at the time that we bought Rosemont Realty, so around 2010, I don't know the exact dates right now. It's a while ago, but Rosemont, we had an initial fundless sponsor deals, so 2 or 3, 4 deals that we did independently and worked those deals. Then we'd raised a fund, so we had a 2007 vintage fund, which is the year that you started. It's very clever. So we had a 2007 vintage co-investment fund, and then. We actually raised out of the financial crisis. We raised the TALF debt fund, so reinvesting in asset-backed securities, and then we had some other sub funds in technology, but ultimately like kind of the big successful piece of Rosemont ended up being Rosemont Realty, which was this acquisition of BGK.
So it sounds like you've got a perfectly self-sustaining business, $3 billion under management. That's success, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was.
So how does Hunter Biden get involved, and why?
Why?
So we had this lunch, and a mutual friend, or it wasn't even, I don't know how it was, but an attorney of Hunter's, another attorney, Hunter's an attorney as well, had introduced us, and we had a lunch, and we always, you're always looking for kind of an edge or an advantage as being a boutique, and certainly $3 billion was good, but as an AUM number, a scorecard, but in real estate, it's kind of a levered number, so
Totally.
it's a little
exactly
exaggerated.
right.
If you're Blackstone 4 and you have $3 billion, you have $3 billion of dry powder. But if you have a small private equity fund with $3 billion under management, a lot of it's real estate. It's actually not the actual number you have in dry powder. So nuance, but
It's very liquid.
Yeah, exactly. It's very liquid, and you don't have the buying power. So you're always looking for an edge. You're always looking to expand. And we had obviously, we were demystified to Washington just through relationships. And Hunter was in a stage where he was transitioning from lobbying to strategic advisory.
What's the difference?
Well, as I understand it, when you can probably
Good question.
answer it better than me, given your background.
There's a distinction, but no difference that I can see.
Right, exactly. So
one you register for, the other you don't.
Right. And I think that there are some legal, limits around registering when your father's the vice president. So I think that was what they ran into. But there's certain, again, I'm not an expert on it. I know that was
I think in Washington, you can't lobby, but you can strategically advise.
Right, exactly. There you go, strategic.
All right, so that's definitely a lefty thing then. They like to play semantics and play the word game in order to live in their false reality. So you're not allowed to lobby, but you can strategically advise. Clearly, there's not a difference there. Clearly, there's not a difference.
Complete advice, right? It's a good nuance.
So what was the business that you imagined him helping you with?
The core business, what we really hoped for was raise introductions to capital, to raise more capital, right?
Yeah.
And deal flow. So the things that make a private equity fund successful, whether it's in real estate or asset-backed securities, or just going out and looking for operating assets, it's finding unique deals. And then finding the capital to actually invest in those deals and make them worth more money. Right?
Exactly.
But
you got to have the dough.
Right. You got to have the dough. So I think the in the back of our minds, the initial strategy was, okay, we can expand our network exponentially. Hunter and his strategic team know tons of folks, and it's a whole new world of of high net worth individuals, family offices, institutional pension funds, which was a huge one that we thought that we could crack that never materialized. And yes, and so that was the genesis. But on paper, what we looked at was like, okay, why are you kind of teaming up this? And there was no investment in it. It was Rosemont Seneca Partners was kind of a dovetail concept. It's not like we didn't fund it, nor did they fund it. We just said they had their strategic advisory business, we had our private equity business. Let's combine forces, expand our network, and maybe get some help. Or maybe when we talk to a strategic asset that's selling we had a company that sold body armor, for instance. Maybe we could get a military contract because someone in DC knew the Pentagon people. I mean, it's just simple kind of connecting the dots.
It is, but if I can just, and this is not a criticism of you because I lived there, I didn't see this either. But if you're looking for money, Washington logically would be the last place you would go.
Right.
I mean, you go to New York or maybe Los Angeles or maybe Dubai or Milan or places where people do business. Washington's not about business, it's about governance.
Right.
It's kind of weird, isn't it? And maybe a sign of deeper corruption that Washington is like the place you go to raise money.
Yeah, I think, where we were in this, in kind of the, in the world of private equity, we're a very small private equity fund at the end of the day. So the network that you're going to is more family office, high net worth individuals, and then maybe you get a breakthrough with a pension fund. So I think the fundraising elements of linking up with Seneca Partners was really that, but we took advantage of all the kind of strategic advisory work and the network that they had to promote to the assets, to promote to the other, to people that were raising money from, say, oh, listen, we have a DC office. We know how to operate. This is going to give us
can I just
advantage.
ask, this is not related to you. Yeah. You were not able to get pension money, right?
No.
But do you believe, having operated in this world, pension funds are some of the biggest investors in the world?
Absolutely. They are the institutional investors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you think that political leverage allows people to get investments from pension funds? I mean, clearly it does.
In the world?
In the world,
yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Unfortunately, we were not able. But
No,
yeah.
but you weren't able to. But like the idea that a pension fund would make an investment decision based on political calculations is like the definition of corruption, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that I think there's an entire world and business
definitely
that's been
is.
focused on trying to create those
It definitely
lines
is.
of demarcation. I mean, it's one of the biggest. I mean, all the pension managers. I mean, it's a whole world to. It's a bigger discussion. But yes, obviously, that would be the ultimate form of corruption.
So just to sum up what I think we're hearing
Sure.
so far is that you're on a pretty conventional business track.
Correct.
You're working for a big bank at first, and then you decide to move into this burgeoning private equity world,
Right.
which really was exploding at the time. And then at some point, having gotten the business off the ground and it's succeeding, you look to Washington for opportunities there.
Right.
And you run into Hunter Biden or are set up with Hunter Biden.
Right. I'm set up with Hunter Biden, and again, at that time, it seemed like it was hindsight's 2020, but
Of
it
course.
seemed like an opportunity to just broaden our network, broaden our competitive advantage on the deal side by having this access or regulatory understanding of DC is how we properly say it, and maybe expanding our and getting lucky with a pension fund introduction.
Yes.
Or another, large family, maybe there's a political donor that's a $1 billion family office on the West Coast that Hunter has a relationship with. So I thought that was enough reason to kind of not invest in a new company, but just, flirt with a joint venture at the end of the day.
So, and you're in your early 30s at this point.
Yeah,
You're trying to
early
make your
30s.
way. You wind up, though, with this deal most famously with Burisma.
Burisma. Yeah.
Yes. How did that come about?
So the Burisma deal came about initially, the CEO, Zolshevsky, and Vadim, I'm going to abuse the name.
I have it here. I've got it right
Why
here.
don't you say it first, and then it'll...
I can't. I got to put my glasses on.
Pozharsky.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Vadim and Nikolai come through. They're working with they're in the network. Again, you're always expanding your network in raising capital and private equity, and work with this group, Tri-Global Group, which famously also worked with Mayor Giuliani, which was another one of their clients, which we found out later, but it was kind of interesting. They had on their fundraising list had Nikolai and Vadim, who were the CEO and the CEO, owner, and corporate secretary of Burisma, and they'd come through New York.
Pozharsky.
Yeah, there we go. We'll just use Vadim, I think. It's
Vadim.
So they come through New York. I was actually on a business trip in Asia, and they're taken through, and the Tri-Global Group says we're working on these things. One of the funds that we're marketing is Rosemont Real Estate Acquisition Fund 1, REEF, and they show it to them, and that's probably I'll probably get the dates wrong, but that's maybe in the early the 2012 range. Okay, so that's the first context. So we've got a placement agent working on Rosemont Real. They're on commission business with Rosemont Real Estate Acquisition Fund. They meet Vadim and Burisma. I don't know if they had known each other before, but there's this a mini Gark, as we call it, and a mini Gark and Vadim, who's the corporate secretary. They come through. They pitch. They give them the deck. I don't know if they spent any time on it. The deck being the marketing presentation for REEF. And nothing happens. They don't come in as an investor, but Tri-Global was successful in identifying some investors for us, not Burisma. Cut to 2014, and I'm in the midst of a trip to Europe, and we're doing a strategic deal with a large bank there. And I get there, late February, early March, and it happens to be the day that Putin invaded Crimea, a peaceful invasion of Crimea, as they say. And so our deal falls through because there's all these, basically it's like this huge paradigm shift, obviously, after Maidan.
Yes.
And, everything changed in Europe, and it became this, there's this new inflection point of Ukraine, and that really started there on those days. So needless to say, our strategic deal with the bank falls through for Rosemont Real Estate Acquisition Fund. So we're quickly pivoting, because in this at the same time we're raising for Rosemont Real Estate Acquisition Fund 2. So I happened to be at a meeting, and Tri-Global says, well, are you still trying to raise capital? So would you like to meet with Nikolai Zolshevsky to pitch your wares. I bring the deck to him. We go through the presentation, and he says, interestingly enough, he knows, obviously he's calculating. He had made some moves earlier, which I'll tell you about. Thinking about Ukraine and the former position that he had. So we pitched him the deck. He kind of looks through it, and I remembered he had some like crazy watch with like a, it was like a Ulysses Nardone with like an oil thing that was ticking. Like the second hand was like one of those oil wells, like cranking like this. Little I know it was a natural gas rig, but so it was hard to decipher. But anyway, it was quite an impression. He again, for the second time, kind of ignored the real estate pitch and mentioned in the meeting, he didn't agree. I mean, he was very polite, but he was obviously not interested in that. Mentioned, he said, President Kwasniewski of Poland has joined my board a couple months ago, and do you mind if he gives you a call? That was kind of like our departure. And I said, yeah, wonderful. Please follow up and write $100 million check into Rosemont Real Estate Acquisition Fund 2. So we never had another discussion about that. And the next day, maybe 48 hours later, Kwasniewski and Vadim, who's the corporate secretary, who was not at the first meeting, but he was in New York, a couple years back. Kwasniewski calls me, says, you want to come to Warsaw? I want to, tell you about Burisma. And I kind of had a hint, but I didn't have a pure picture.
It was the president of Poland.
It was the president of Poland, yeah. Yeah. So it was.
So you happen to be over there trying to raise money for a real estate fund.
Exactly. I was there for a big strategic closing that got completely
blown up by world events.
Exactly, by world events.
So you're over there to raise money for your real estate fund.
Correct.
From the guy from Burisma, because he's just a rich guy looking to diversify. They make a ton of money selling natural gas, and they want to invest it.
Right.
He's not interested in your pitch, and he says, by the way, since you're here, I'd like you to talk to the president of Poland.
Yes.
Who then calls you.
Yes. Yes. It was coordinated by Vadim, but yes, eventually we somehow got connected on.
That's definitely a crazy sequence of events. But I would assume that nobody turns down a meeting with the president of Poland. I mean, if a president of anywhere calls you, you probably listen. I forgot what I was about to say.
WhatsApp, and yes, calls me, invites me to Poland. I was on a plane. I was on a lot flight from, or whatever the airline's called. I think it's LOT, from JFK within a couple days. And I flew directly to Warsaw for 36 hours. Sat down with Kwasniewski, and he said, "Listen, we've got a great opportunity, energy independence for Ukraine. This company Burisma. I joined the board. There's we've looked at your profile. I know you got Rosemont." You can raise, and the idea was to raise outside capital for Burisma. So they were like, come join the board. It's a very high paying opportunity. It wasn't, we didn't talk details on that in that particular meeting, but he's like, trust me, and there's a chance to build an equity position in this business, and this could be, the next Exxon of Ukraine or whatever. I think there's some discovery emails that talk about that. Yeah. So
well, why wouldn't it have been? I mean, it was a real company.
Exactly, real company, incredible management team. New age equipment.
But why you?
Why me? Because I was a bereaver.
You were a true bereaver, huh?
I was no. Why me?
No, it's just interesting because you're raising money for a real estate fund. But then the guy from the natural gas company says, talk to the president of Poland about joining the board of our natural gas company.
Right.
Was Hunter Biden mentioned at all?
Hunter Biden was not mentioned, though. I mean, I can't deny that they did some research about Rosemont Seneca Partners, but
because it just seems like
it was not mentioned. It was not mentioned to me.
It's a little. I mean, you sound like a very capable business operator, but not someone who specializes in the energy sector.
No, I've had a diverse portfolio.
Right. Well, now you know a lot about energy.
Now I do.
Yeah, but then.
Right. Agreed. I had one energy investment that we had made in Texas, but that's true. I was certainly not by any stretch of the imagination an expert in excavating natural gas.
Right. But the president of Poland is asking you to join the board. I mean, by the way, lots of weird things happen in life, but I just kind of suspect that maybe this was all about getting Hunter Biden involved.
I actually, I think that they saw an opportunity to raise I think that they thought that I was close enough to political powers that I don't think that was their initial intention, to be completely honest. I don't think they were like, I was a mark that they identified and then found Hunter. I think it was a little bit more natural than that. And at the end of the day, similar to kind of what happened in my fate, that, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. So how did he get involved?
So it was as you go on with the progression of the story. So he's obviously a partner. We're always looking to incent each other and include each other in each of our opportunities. And what happened was I came back. I joined the board, or I started the process of joining the board. I did join the board. I think I was on the board in March of that year of 2014. Was probably my first month there. And then I came back, and Hunter was of counsel. And so what I did is I brought him on board, as counsel to legally represent the company and help them, and basically have a firm in DC that would look out for their best interests, or kind of their any kind of geopolitical.
I'm sorry. I'm calling bullshit on just this one thing, okay? So this is a city filled with law firms.
Yes.
Where every...
Yeah, but Hunter was my partner.
I know. Just saying, this is a city where the number one job for a college-educated Caucasian man is lawyer at a firm.
Right, exactly.
Right. And a lot of those firms deal with foreign transactions and business and whatever. Hunter Biden doesn't have actually a meaningful history as a practicing attorney.
He's been in the kind of lobbying world.
So, that's an influence.
Yeah, that's complete bullshit. The story completely fell apart right there. So, I joined the board in March without them thinking anything about Hunter Biden. I wasn't a mark. It was more natural. And then on my next meeting, I bring Hunter, who's not a lawyer, as my lawyer because he knows lawyers. That's retarded. That is absolutely retarded. If you can't hear anything on Twitch, I don't know what that issue is. Feel free to join us on rumble.com/McClures. Or we are up on YouTube, but the YouTube stream isn't working very well either. Yeah, go to rumble.com/McClures. And apparently, if you're on Android, you can chat within the Android app now for Rumble. They didn't used to have that feature available. It is available now. And everybody else new that has tapped in on Rumble, we appreciate you. If you could hit the thumbs up, that helps. Click the follow so you get notified of the future streams. And send me a donation. It can't hurt to try. It can't hurt. Like Leslie did, we appreciate hers.
Play, right? There.
Yeah, I think the firm that he's with counsel was prominent and had a large business in lobbying. So I think it made sense, and it was also incenting a business partner of ours, and it was a business partner of mine. I think it was it made all the logic in the world, and I think if it stayed like that, it would have been a little
history would have been very different.
History would have been.
So how did he wind up on the board of Burisma?
So what happened was we quickly developed. There was a team from Burisma that came into DC, did some meetings. There was a kind of a lead practitioner on the law side that was brought in to be like the, Hunter was a relationship manager, and then there was like a lead for what things that needed to be done. We need to lobby.
Is relationship manager, is that like a business card title?
It's generally like of counsel at these law firms. It's to make introductions.
Yeah, of course. I just love that phrase.
I should have gone to law school.
Exactly. I aspire to be that.
No, it's so good gig if you can get it. Yeah. Anyway, so no, this is a natural progression. So we hire, and then And so, a month or two goes by. We're at an economic conference in Italy, Lake Como, which was nice. Beautiful hotel.
Or if I can say, as your friend Vadim calls it in a letter I want to ask about in a minute that we got, is May of 2014. Following our talks during the visit to the Como Lake.
Yes, the Como Lake. Exactly. Lake Como. Absolutely. It was gorgeous weather, and it was May of 2014. And so, that trip at DC Vadim had been on that trip. I forget if there was other executives there, meeting at the law firm in the conference center or large conference room, and got a lot done, and it seemed to be off to a good start. They visited us, Vadim and Nikolai visited us at the Villa d'Este at this economic conference. And Hunter, was of, the relationship manager at the time of counsel, and they, kind of struck up a conversation, and Kwasniewski was not there, but on WhatsApp and kind of in the conversation. And I think, similar to what, as opposed to like me being a mark and an orchestrated effort to get Hunter on board, I think they all of a sudden saw, the relationship that I brought by doing this, and thought, wait, we can go a step further. We got the president of Poland. We've got this, a couple of finance guys on the board. We've got a couple of Ukrainians and Cypriots for regulatory reasons in those, in those domiciles. And we can get the son of the vice president on the board. And, they saw that opportunity and they made the offer. And I think
at the meeting in Lake Como.
At the meeting in Lake Como.
So that's fast.
I was not at that meeting, but it was a meeting that was done in a sidebar the idea came back, and I think a month later it was.
So what's so interesting? So here's this letter that I referred to at the Como Lake. And it's May 12th, 2014, 8:29 a.m. And this is from Vadim Pozharsky to you and Hunter. And he goes on, and it's kind of complicated about what he's talking about, corruption in Ukraine. But he gets here. He says, "We urgently need your advice on how you could use your influence to convey a message, signal, etc., to stop what we consider to be politically motivated actions, etc." And that's from Vadim. So
right.
They figured it out right away.
Absolutely, yes. That the term signal in every other kind of market or theater or whatever you want to describe, it's like a pretty it's a well-used term. So signal, like the U.S. doesn't use it, but it's a very common term to send signals between government and business, because government can always shut you down. It's almost like the shakedown kind of. I try to equate it to something, but you always want to be sending positive signals from that regulatory body, i.e. the government, to the business that you're not going to be shut down.
Right.
And so I think they're using in common term to them and sending back here to us and say, like, oh, I hope we're protected, kind of thing. That's the term signal.
Well, you just flat out says it. Exactly. We urgently need your advice on how you can use your influence.
Right.
Right. So, and that's all kind of, again, just for context, it's pretty conventional.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what lobbying firms are for.
Yes. But then comes the question of General Shokan, the prosecutor.
Right.
Tell us, that seems to me, that's when it gets heavy.
Right. Okay.
So what was that?
So Shokin was and I'm going to get the dates wrong, but Shokin was he was the prosecutor, the head prosecutor in Ukraine. And he was taking a close look at Burisma.
So maybe not so different from an attorney general.
Right. Right. But he was taking, much more case active, I think.
Right.
An attorney general is more of like a manager of people that handle cases, and they have their independence.
This guy's the law.
He's like the law, yeah. So the buck stops with him. Hence, the signals are more important in countries outside the United States. So Shokin is taking a close look at Burisma. There were allegations that some of the deposits or some of the reserves were not, authentically acquired or whatever it may be. And so those were I think that was the genesis of the complaints. And there were always, being in Ukraine and being in that part of the world, there was always kind of challenges that they were facing. They're from not being able to get a visa to money being tied up in London. And this was just another, in a series of of issues that law firms and strategic advisory firms were hired for to handle these kind of things, right?
Yeah.
So the Shokin case was, he was taking a look at Burisma, and there was a big push by European leaders, the Atlantic Council, et cetera, to fire Shokin because he was corrupt. Like it's hard to kind of decipher who's, it's all.
Can I just ask you, just
yeah.
sidebar, like why would the Atlantic Council be getting involved in Shokin here? I mean, that's
I mean, I think I don't know on the Shokin piece. I mean, again,
this is the lead prosecutor in Ukraine,
right?
So if Ukraine is actually a country with sovereignty and not just a colony of, say, the neocons in the United States, like why wouldn't they just let Ukraine deal with their own? Like why would Western powers even get involved in who the chief prosecutor in Ukraine is?
That's a question that I don't know.
I couldn't control myself. So, but within Burisma,
right,
this Shokin was considered a threat to your business.
Shokin was considered a threat to the business. I think
I think he does know. He just doesn't want to say. I was muted. You couldn't hear me.
Anyone in, again, you got to get the signals to the government. I think anyone in government was always a threat, and always trying to shake down these businesses that were highly successful and enriching the owners and the staff and the board and whatever. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, Shokin was taking a look, and again, if I wasn't involved in Shokin or any of this, but he was a threat. He ended up seizing assets of Nikolai, a house, some cars, a couple of properties, and Nikolai actually never went back to Ukraine after Shokin seized all of his assets. And the case was, and obviously it's all out there. The case was that Shokin, there was all this pressure to fire Shokin from this, the larger community, and then he was fired, and then somehow Burisma was let off the hook. I mean, that's what the story was.
And Joe Biden, of course, was the driving force behind his firing.
Yeah, he was involved in that. There's obviously video.
Involved. I mean, Biden bragged at Council on Foreign Relations. They had $1 billion coming from IMF, and I said, if you don't fire this man, you're not getting $1 billion.
Right.
Yeah, he strong-armed him into firing a prosecutor looking into his son. He bragged about it on film, and yet there's no evidence that Biden was involved in Hunter's businesses. Seriously, people? No evidence? Clearly, there's evidence. I mean, look at this pompous jackass's face. He's evidence.
But it's I think on this one, it certainly wasn't made clear to us at the board level, that was a favor to be done. The narrative, I don't know the narrative, and I don't want to lead anyone down that kind of path. That's what happened, because I don't know the narrative.
But Joe Biden knew that his son was on the board of this company that was being hassled by the prosecutor whose firing he was calling for.
Right.
Yeah. And this took place 3 years after he sent you a letter saying thanks for all the work you're doing with Hunter. So clearly he would know this would benefit the family.
Right. I don't want to get it, but the narrative was that Shokin was already taken care of. That was the popular narrative. That's the only thing that
he was already on his way out.
Exactly. That was the narrative that was fed to the board.
Okay, so you were told when Shokin got fired that it had nothing to do with it.
No, we were told that was bad and we don't want a new prosecutor. So was taken care of. So it's very, this is not like, checkers. This is multiple dimensions here. So a popular.
This is like Connect 4.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's I think in this particular case, it's pretty high stakes and pretty sophisticated. So the narrative that I was told was that's just, I've said it under oath and I'll say it again. That was the narrative.
So I'm confused. Did he just say the narrative was the board of Burisma already thought that Shokin was taken care of, meaning he was already bought and paid for? They didn't have to worry about him anymore? They were able to funnel him enough money to not cause any issues for Burisma? And then Joe Biden comes in and gets him fired anyways? And that wasn't a win for them? I'm not buying it. Leslie says, in my opinion, they're all professionals at not being direct with any point. They just flutter around with the dates, meetings, and intentions. Yeah, he's basically having an interview and answering questions without answering questions kind of deal. But that doesn't make any sense at all. So according to Devin Archer, the Burisma board wasn't stoked that Shokin was fired. I'm pretty sure they were.
Did you ever, were you aware, do you have knowledge that Hunter spoke to his dad about Burisma?
Do I have knowledge?
Yes. Do you know that Hunter spoke to his dad about Burisma? Did you ever see them talk about it, hear them talk about it? Was Joe Biden?
No, I don't have knowledge of that, though I'd assume it.
You would assume it.
Right. I would assume it in a general sense of travel and that kind of thing. But on, like I've told a lot of people in the past, there was not business content conversations. It was the idea of signals and influence. The prize is enough in speaking or hearing or knowing that you have that proximity to power. No one is so unsophisticated that's been in politics for 50 years
Right.
that Hunter is going to talk about, the last quarter's, how many billion cubic meters of gas we pumped out of the ground.
Right.
So it's just, I think a lot of the narrative gets caught up on, over speculation of these conspiracy theories that are just not true. I think
that's not the way it actually
It just
works.
doesn't work like that.
So it's enough to be sitting at a meal at Lake Como with your new Ukrainian friends, and your dad happens to call. Let's put him on speaker.
That would be that's. I think that's enough. That's the second most powerful man in the world. It's just how the world works.
So there's been a lot of effort on the part of Republicans to prove money transfers from Hunter to Joe.
Right.
And then there's the other brother, Jimmy, who I'm going to ask about in a minute. But so far there are hints of it, but we haven't seen the direct transfer. But did you ever wonder when you were in the Biden orbit, how do they live so well? I mean, Hunter grew up in a huge house in Wilmington. The family had this very expensive beach house. And how do you do that on a politician's salary? We don't pay our politicians very much.
Well, I think Hunter had a successful lobbying and advisory business.
Sure, but these are his dad's houses.
Right.
How does that, did you ever wonder, how do you do that?
Well, at that question, I really only was under the kind of tenure at the Naval Observatory, so I knew the government was paying. We were paying for it.
Yeah, no, of course, but they had these other houses.
Yeah, I was at Bo's house. I was at Hunter's house, but those were the houses. So that was not something that I often thought about. Put it that way.
Okay. It's just interesting because you're coming from a non-political world on Long Island, middle-class world, and you wind up in, around all these high flyers.
Yeah. Right. I mean,
and some of them don't have business jobs. They have political jobs, but they're living really, really well.
Yeah. I thought the cost of living was lower and what. No, I don't, it is pretty remarkable. It's
pretty weird, right?
Suburban place to live. And I mean, I think the money that's thrown around DC is significant. I mean, as far as lobbying contracts and legal contracts and.
So he just had the veil pulled over. He wasn't asking questions or paying attention. He was just utilizing his connections to further his business. I mean, I guess you can't fully knock that. You're kind of a shady piece of shit for it. But yeah, I mean, he's trying to run a business. He's like, look, I don't know where Biden's getting his money. I don't care. All I know is X is good for me. Interesting.
All of the, the bills that go out, and I mean, there's money flow. I mean, it certainly is.
But it sticks to the people who live there. The money's supposed to go out to the whole continent.
Right. Yeah, that's a bigger discussion.
Doesn't Interesting. So when Biden called for Shokin to be fired,
right,
very publicly, and then got it done, bam,
right.
What did you think?
Again, the narrative. This has been. They've tried to beat this into my head a million times because it does work on paper as far as the the logical steps. But we were told that Shokin had already been taken care. That he was under control, and that this is going to be a whole big problem for Burisma now.
It's a huge problem
because. I mean, I don't know.
The guy was going to shut our business down just got fired. Oh no!
It's just what it was. It was kind of pounded into our heads. Obviously, as I look back in the rear view, it doesn't paper as well. But it it looks like there was something.
I'm asking you because you said at the outset that, well, first of all, that you liked Hunter,
absolutely,
who was a very likable. I can attest personally, a very likable guy,
absolutely,
but that you thought it was, useful. He knows his way around Washington. His dad's vice president of the United States, all this stuff. It's all good. But that there was the Icarus problem, that like if you use those contexts too much, maybe it hurts you. Maybe you get burned by it. Did you feel that when Shokin got fired, like, ooh, maybe this is a little close to the sun here?
No, on that one, I just was kind of listen. I was believing the narrative because we were in where I felt the Icarus was when he announced we were in Doha
as one is
running around with some of the royal family at another conference, and part of the benefits of actually doing the Rosemont-Seneca partnership, you're getting access in these meetings. Anyway, long story short, we're in Doha and they release some picture on the website that Hunter had joined the board. And that was that was like the tipping point where Icarus had arrived a little too close to the sun.
Yeah.
And the rest of my story has, been a slow downward.
Yeah. The trajectory changed at that point.
It was like this, exactly. That was the Icarus moment. When I saw that release and I saw, it was the middle of night.
Burisma that had released that?
Burisma released it, didn't tell us, and it was like the most Googled news story like in the world for 18 hours. And I was like, this is going to be a different
because
world.
to a civilian, you're thinking, okay, huge, super lucrative Eastern European natural gas company,
incredible.
Sort of semi-employed kind of lawyer lobbyist from DC. Like, what is he doing on there?
Well, let's say, I think Tucker's point, she said, so they're saying politicians live mediocre lives. I think Tucker's point is they're supposed to be, based on their, what we pay politicians. They should be. But because of all the influence peddling and shady backroom deals, they're living like they're big ballin'. And everybody seems okay with it, apparently.
They're bored. Like, it just seemed.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it really, at the time, I was I didn't have, we didn't calculate the risk appropriately. And the rest is history.
So whether or not Hunter convinced his dad to come out against Shokin, and there's debate.
Right.
It was very clear that the Burisma guys were hoping to leverage Hunter's relationship with the vice president, his father.
Yes.
At one point, they told Hunter to, quote, call his dad.
Yeah, I think referencing the email that you put earlier, there was constant pressure to send signals, to leverage all of his dad included, but the Biden brand, all of the the DC insider and relationships to help Burisma survive. I think that's at the end of the day what we're talking about.
I mean, that was the
idea.
That's what he brought.
It was that ability to help on the geopolitical stage, keep them out of trouble, keep them out of investigations, unfreeze assets, unsuccessfully, unfreeze visas, and the first challenge, which was there was a 23 million pound account that was released to Burisma because of alleged non-cooperation by the prosecutor. I don't know if Shokin or the guy before that, but that was successful. And I think,
did Hunter help with that?
The perception of him being on the board probably provided a halo that helped with that, but no active. There was no active.
But they were not consulting him on like pipeline construction or wellhead design.
No. It was hiring lobbyists and law firms to.
No, he was a relationship
and various,
manager.
like NGOs to.
He was just
help.
He was just managing
clear the path
relationships
from regulatory roadblocks at the end of the day.
When they asked him to call his dad, did he?
I was not privy to the conversation directly, but they've asked. That was. Vadim met with his dad at dinner at Cafe Milano, a famous dinner at Cafe Milano. So I did not listen to a particular call where they spoke, but I know that the request was made by Vadim a lot.
What did Vadim say to the vice president at that dinner at Cafe Milano?
At dinner was, politics. I think there was a World Food Program element, weather, nothing specific to Burisma.
But the idea was by having that relationship and by saying, I met with the vice president in Washington, that gives him SWAT.
Yeah, I think at the end of that's the, the prize, or the, being able to have, whether it's on, speakerphone or in person, to have, that person in direct contact, whether you're talking about, weather or, politics or what have you, that's the important part. I don't think, there's no relevance in asking, the vice president about, the gas,
right,
revenues or anything.
It's
like that. It was never. It's enough. And the prize is that contact.
The signal is sent by going to the dinner.
What was the payment like from Burisma? Like, what did Hunter get? I mean, he famously made.
It was
$83,000 a month.
It was 80. Yeah, it was taken into a company. It was 283. Like, the contracts were around board seats, and then the kind of scope of work was him on the governance side, as we've talked about, and I was in first to raise capital, but then after the Doha Google situation where they announced him on the board, raising outside capital was out. So it became international expansion. So the payment was $2 million a year to one of our LLCs. There were other business activities that happened in that. We had to pay some of the Cap Intro guys that introduced us initially through the Rosemont Realty. So he, the payments were, and I think it's incredibly well documented. Initially, it was about $600,000-$700,000 a year. It built to about $1 million, and then it was, I think, less for the rest of his tenure.
The second his father left the VP's office, it went down.
I think that happened.
You think that happened?
I think that I was long out of it by then, but I think
so what about,
I've been told that.
What about gifts? And this is a part of the world where people give gifts,
right?
And those gifts are a kind of non-taxable payment. You could argue.
You could argue.
Were there gifts?
There were some birthday gifts. A watch.
Just Timex kind of watch, or
no? What was the watch? I believe it was a Hubolt.
A Hubolt.
I'm not actually sure. I shouldn't even say that, but I don't know. But I know there's a birthday gift. I've also been refreshed in my memory through the series of documents that have been put in front of me.
Yeah, through your testimony to the Congress.
It might have been. Yeah. Exactly.
So a watch like that would cost, like, ballpark,
$50,000 to $100,000.
Yeah. So a real gift.
A real gift, meaningful.
So you're working in Ukraine, and just based on our off-camera conversations, we're actually interested in the business.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of an interesting business, actually. It powers the world. So
right, it powers the world. And
meaningful business.
Yep.
In your time in Ukraine, did you notice a lot of Americans running around from Washington, exerting influence over there?
There was, I think obviously it's an important part of the world. I think for different factions of different opposing east-west types of.
Body language got real nervous on that question. He's like, look, I'm just trying to rat out Hunter. I'm not trying to rat out everybody. Don't talk to me about everybody I met over there.
Views. So yes, there were a lot of Americans lobbying, USAID, State Department officials. There were a lot of Americans.
Because the picture you paint doesn't sound like a sovereign country. It really does seem like a protectorate or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't. And the protectorate might be an overstep, but yes, there is a lot of interest in Ukraine and who controls Ukraine, and that's it's a geopolitical conversation. That
Did you ever see
is right
Tori
in
and
front of us.
Newland there?
We definitely. I never saw her in person, but she was definitely. I think that was in her scope, in her theater.
Did she have a lot of influence in Ukraine? Was it?
She did, yeah, she did. She was. It was constantly trying to curry favor with her. She was one that you wanted on your good side, as I remember. I don't remember the specifics, whether it was, there were some issues with one of the ambassadors mentioned Burisma as corrupt at some point, and that was a big thing. And there was like a big effort to try and redact that. I think there was some lobbying done to her or with her, but
did it get done?
No, obviously Burisma. I think Nikolai, who came to New York and ate a Cat's Deli back in 2012, looking at the real estate pitch, ended up in Cyprus. I think he's still there. So no, nothing ever worked with that. Though I do believe that at the end of the day, Burisma wouldn't have stayed in business so long, if Hunter was not on the board.
So they got
some
their
years.
money back.
I think they got some years.
Why did you leave?
I left in something completely unrelated.
Because you got in trouble with another company.
Correct. Exactly.
And so you got off the board, but Hunter stayed on.
Hunter stayed on, yeah.
How long did you remain in business with him?
After we had the issue with that other company, I was no longer in business
With him.
with him. I was friendly. We were retained a friendship for a couple of years, and then there was it's complicated and can't talk about it because it's an ongoing case. But there was a reversal of a conviction, and then there was subsequently that the reversal of conviction was re-reversed, and after the re-reversal, we kind of never spoke again.
For legal reasons, or was there enmity between?
It was just no, absolutely no. There's again, looking back at the body of work, it was a very big strategic mistake for me to be involved with him, and some of it was my fault because, quite frankly, I was pitching Burisma Roosevelt Realty, and that ended up that the genesis that was me. But obviously, the trajectory of my life would have been far different and arguably far better if I've never met him.
And you didn't make that much money from Burisma.
No, I think it was. I mean, relative to the world, yes, it was a lot of money. Relative to my middle class upbringing, it was a ton of money, but it wasn't life changing money, and it was quickly exhausted on legal bills.
Yeah. So how have you? What's interesting in this conversation is you're very sympathetic to Hunter Biden, the person. Like, you like him. You still say you like him.
Absolutely. His children. I mean, I've been to their lacrosse games.
Yeah.
It's a good family, and they they've got a great relationship, father and son. Speak every day. I witnessed that for 10 years.
So, and you're not, I mean, you work for John Kerry for president, so you're obviously not a partisan.
I was a volunteer. But.
Yeah, but you're not a partisan actor. I think it's fair to say you're not grinding political acts.
Absolutely not.
Here. How have you been treated by, well, you obviously are a Democrat, or were a Democrat most of your life anyway.
Well, I was never registered Democrat. I was registered independent, but just for the record. But I have been treated by, the treatment seems to be the treatment of just getting out ahead of this and speaking the truth and just retelling my story, that a lot of people seem to be interested. A lot of the negativity seems to come anonymously. Obviously there's murmurs of different folks saying different things, but the threats and stuff like that seem to come from whether they're AI bots or people in a basement in Cleveland. Not to pick on Cleveland, but
probably Cleveland.
It might be. I don't know. I can't kind of pinpoint it, but it is definitely a bit of a scary time.
The reaction to what you've said in public, to what you said to the committee on the Hill, and doubtless to what you've been telling us in this interview, is that, like, there's no corruption here at all. This is totally normal. Joe Biden had no role whatsoever in his son's business or knowledge of it. But that seems false.
Yeah, I think that's categorically false. I think that
obviously
he was aware of Hunter's business. He met with Hunter's business partners. You found a letter that illustrates that he knew me.
And he's thanking you. He's thanking you for his efforts.
So I think that was,
for your efforts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's a that's not.
That's what's so funny about all the lefties in my comments on Instagram when I post shit about this. There's no evidence. There's no evidence. There's no evidence. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this shit out. Hunter's a useless crackhead. Foreign companies are paying the useless crackhead. And it's not to manage relationships. It's to gain access to their corrupt ass father, or his corrupt ass father. It's clear as day. Clear as day.
Factually right. But in the same breath, there's no. I don't think Joe Biden's looked at a balance sheet or a cap table or what have you, or any financial document, probably ever.
Yeah.
So there
done pretty well for not looking at.
Well, that's
yeah. So who's Jimmy Biden? His brother.
Jimmy Biden, his brother, that's Joe, the president's brother.
Yeah.
And he really picked up, post my, issues, and worked with him, in business that he got into in China and Romania, kind of after my tenure with Rosemont Seneca Partners. But I think he probably filled some void of, companionship and business companionship, in the years after I was basically.
Did you ever spend time with him?
Not a lot. 3 or 4 times. 3 or 4 times.
So he ran. There's not a lot written about him. He ran a nightclub for a while in Wilmington. I think that went under.
Mm-hmm.
But was it your sense that he had a high degree of business acumen?
He was always willing to. He was always willing. I have no real opinion about Jimmy, quite frankly. I know he likes Diet Mountain Dew. That's
Diet Mountain Dew.
Yeah, I'm a big Diet Mountain Dew guy. But yeah, I did.
All right, that's weird. Because I know I don't want to talk about Jimmy at all. What does Jimmy know about you, bro? Why do I want to talk about Jimmy?
Never did a business deal with him. I socially interacted with him on a very few occasions.
But did you think it's a little weird? So here's Hunter Biden, and here's the brother Jimmy with the Diet Mountain Dew. Like, what is this exactly? This Biden brand? What is the business?
What is as a whole? I mean,
yeah. What is the business?
It's a diverse portfolio of opportunity.
It's a diverse portfolio of opportunity.
Yes.
Hunter and Jimmy.
Well, obviously, I mean, you've seen again, I keep referring to the rearview mirror. I mean, the portfolio has, exhausted, and Hunter's on to better things. So
yeah. Well, he's an artist.
He is an artist, yes.
And I'm not going to offer any reviews of his work, but I just have to ask, like, in the many years that in the 10 years you spent with him,
did you do a lot of painting?
Evidence any interest in painting?
Not particularly. But he was very, he was a very well-read student of history. So he was far more interested in, I wouldn't say artistic ventures, but certainly not painting. That was a surprise.
It was a surprise.
Yeah, it was a surprise.
What is that? I
mean, I think that after looking at the portfolio of our experiences, yes. I might do the same thing.
You might do this
because I mean, it's just. I mean, that's a long haul
for sure,
covered with tragedy and
yes.
Addiction, and then going through all that. I think you just have to have a reset.
That makes sense to me. Getting $500,000 for your paintings like 6 months after you start painting seems a little weird. No?
I mean, I'm not an. I mean, I do have smart artists in my family. I wish my grandfather got that, but yeah, no, that's.
Do you think
for him.
Your life has also taken ups and downs and twists and turns you didn't expect. If you decided, like, in 6 months to start painting, do you think that you could get $500,000 a painting?
I don't. It depends on how the show goes.
Do you think that's one of the opportunities open to you in your diverse portfolio?
That's really why I'm here.
To pitch your painting.
Exactly.
So
I'm starting.
A lot since the laptop came out. What do you think of that, by the way? The
laptop?
Yeah. Were you shocked by that?
That
A
was
laptop from hell.
That was not great. Yeah, that was obviously I'm
Oh, not great. That's in the not great category.
this is not great. Great. Yeah, that was a real bummer, I guess.
Yeah.
In the not great category. What did I think about it? I mean, it was an absolute shock that's perpetuated this, kind of nightmare that I've been living for the last
Did he call
8
you
years.
when that?
Why haven't you asked him about drug use? I mean, if he's hanging out buddy with Hunter, traveling all over the world, highfalutin places, why are we not asking him about drug use if he's seen Hunter use drugs? Well, I guess we don't need to confirm that. We all know Hunter's a crackhead. Yeah, I guess we don't even need that.
Came out?
When no,
Yeah.
no, he did not.
Ooh.
No.
Because you're obviously on it.
Yeah, no, extensively.
Yeah.
Yes, not visually, but
Right. Right. Not a single naked picture of you in that
there's
laptop.
not. Yeah, all over it, and it's just led to just incessant and never-ending media fodder that brings me back in. And
Last question. A lot has been written about his drug and alcohol problems, and the laptop is.
Oh, he does get to it.
Is a visual record of those.
right.
How did they affect your relationship with him?
Well, it was he was for the initial part of our the 10-year of our relationship and business partnership. It was he was sober, so there was no that wasn't a part of our it wasn't part of our relationship. And then I think there's some some tragedy that fell upon him with his brother, and coming from an early past of tragedy, things got hard mentally, and he slipped back in, and obviously that.
Yeah, he was so sad about losing his brother, he had to bang his wife. He was so broken up. That's how close of a family they are. If one of you dies, another family member steps in to fuck your wife. Super close.
Created some chaos.
That's crazy.
That was created less effective kind of business decisions. Now, Burisma was already started, so that moment, that tipping point, had already happened at the end of the day, where the downhill spiral started, and I think a lot of those pressures of the media also contributed to it.
But you're tethered to this guy in business, right? And then he starts to fall apart,
right? And it was not. Yes, it was not a. He made a lot of efforts to to repair and go to rehab and get better. And then I, again, through another business that we're involved in, was kind of taken out, and then so I didn't go through the actual kind of full downward spiral and then rebirth. Only
you said
from
you
afar.
were taken out. Do you think you were taken out?
No, I can't comment on that. Huh. It's an ongoing case. So.
Probably not out of the realm of possibility, one suspects. Devin Archer, thank you for spending all this time.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
All right, folks. That's it. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Feel free to tap in on the comments. Let me know what you guys think about it. Do we find Devin Archer credible? I do. With the amount of questions that he was not willing to answer and how he answered a lot of questions, you can definitely tell he's still hiding a bunch of information, which probably means the little bit of information he is letting out is probably fairly accurate. But yeah, interesting stuff. Definitely interesting stuff. It's funny to me. It's funny to me how he can still sit there and, well, I don't know, because obviously he's still protecting himself. He doesn't want to catch any type of case or criminal stuff. He has to be careful about what he says and how he says it. He also doesn't want to make enemies with some of these super highfalutin people that he's met over his tenure, because these are the kind of people that can take you out in more ways than one. when you're dealing with people with that much influence and that much money. So he's probably being fairly careful about what he says. Him completely avoiding the Biden brother is interesting to me. And is that the same brother who famously got the Iraqi contract to build a bunch of houses and he wasn't a builder? You know what I mean? Ugh. Excuse me. But everybody that tapped into Rumble, we appreciate you for stopping by. Make sure you hit a thumbs up before you take off and hit the follow so you get notified of future streams that are going to come out. Because we do stream at least Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we are trying to stream more often. And I am diligently trying to figure out an actual schedule. I just have, because I'm trying to make a go at streaming as a full-time gig, I have a bunch of side hustles right now to try to make money so I can feed my children. Which makes my schedule kind of all over the place. So it's hard for me to designate a specific time. I used to stream 3:30 to 5:30, but it didn't seem like the right time for a lot of people who wanted to tune in. So we started kind of dancing around times and trying to figure out when would be the best time to stream for you guys. Obviously, I want to stream when people are going to watch it. So we have been trying to work that out. But if you guys have any recommendations for me, definitely let me know. But I am going to try to iron out an official schedule that we can stick to. So hopefully you guys can make me a regular in your streaming schedule and check out the content that we're putting out. We do a wide variety of stuff. We obviously do the political stuff. I'm interested in it. But we do music and comedy and all kinds of stuff. I'm trying to get into the independent artist scene, so to speak. We've done a couple independent artist interviews on my channel and dove into their music during the interview, get their reaction and their insight into it. So that's definitely something I want to continue doing. If you know any independent artist who would like to get onto the channel for an interview, send them my way via the Instagram right here. Leslie's out. She's got to go night-night. Good night, chick. Thanks for stopping into the stream, and I appreciate your donation. I really do. It means a lot. Everything helps. So if any of you current streamers or viewers would like to send me $1 before we get out of here, I will take it. We could definitely use it. We could definitely use it. But, yeah, it's already midnight here. So we are going to get out of here. I appreciate everybody for tuning in and stopping by and hanging out with me. Again, hit the like, the thumbs up, the follow, the join if you want to support long term. Yeah, check back in with us. We appreciate you. Later, bye.